Hi, and welcome to another episode of Bridging International Waters. I'm your host, Priyanka Pandit, and I have with me the fabulous.
I'm Mark Safari, and thank you so much for joining us today. Um,
On
Here we
this
are.
episode. Yes, that's us. And today we're going to talk about something that's really, really difficult that all of us face in conflicts. We're going to talk about impasse and deadlock, and we're going to walk you through what impasse and deadlock is and some of the techniques or tools that we as mediators use to move beyond this impasse and deadlock. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about what happens when in a mediation you reach a deadlock. And we're also going to talk about why sometimes this deadlock occurs, why we become stuck in when the conversations are flowing. We're going to discuss various techniques that mediators often use to move forward and explore how reframing can shift perspectives. This is really, really important. Reframing is fantastic, and not just for conflict, even when you're having general discussions one on one in your personal relationships, reframing can really give you a different insight in perspectives. And of course, we're going to share examples that Marcus and I have sort of navigated in our workplace and family mediations. So, over to you, Marcus, to take
Thank you
us
so
through the
much. Well explained. And it's great to be back. It's great to be back. So the signs of an impasse are very, very interesting. And it can happen, you can feel almost when it's heading down that pathway to a deadlock. Um, And the signs are basically things go in the same loop and the same triggers come up and the same reactions and the same responses. And then they come so fixed to positions. I'm not budging because of this, and I'm from this ranking and status and hierarchy. And that, it's like we cannot negotiate on positions. It's just not what we can do. But it's when the emotional tension just gets to that point and you just like you as a mediator you're looking and assessing the situation always of how you could navigate through international waters in this case of steering it in a direction that can work out for both. Now when the emotional tension comes to the point of where they're directing it the blame and the shame at each other, there's always a reason why, and that is why when the attacks become against each other, each party then becomes more defensive, held back, reserved, not cooperating to any form of agreement or outcome. It can stall, hinder, and even just completely stop the process whatsoever. And you're like, as a mediator, you need to be on your toes to think, right, okay, you think and feel it might be heading that way. You can also put a couple of pauses in there. And then,
Yes.
yeah. So I'll let Priyanka go in with the reframe, yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this takes me back to our episodes, Marcus, where we talked about listening skills and we talked about the importance of pause. And what that does for a mediator is it helps us take a pause and sort of reframe. Now, what do I mean by reframe? Let's understand what reframing really is. So, typically, in a situation of a deadlock or an impasse, you're looking at people either coming up with positions like Marcus explained, or they'll a position like I won't pay anything, right? Or they'll come up with a blame narrative, like they'll say something like they cheated on me, they breached my trust. Or you can come across sometimes identity threats, like someone saying I feel deeply disrespected and hurt because of the way this sort of unfolded. And as a mediator, I'm not listening to the words that are being used. I'm trying to go beyond the intention of what is being said and look at the underlying interest, trying to understand what emotion was hurt here. So, like in the first example where I said when someone says I won't pay anything or I'm not paying a single rupee, My response when I reframe this will be okay, so it's important to you that any payment that's made reflects what you believe is fair and justified. Now, when you see what I've done is I've said the exact same thing, but I've reframed it to make it a little more open ended without challenging what is being said to me by this party. And I've only given now an opportunity for them to say, yes, I believe that, there is a window here for payment as far as I agree what's fair and justified. So now I've moved the perspective from I'm not going to pay a rupee to all right, I'm open to paying something that's fair and reasonable according to me. So similarly, when you come across various different positions, and of course, this is something, and I can't say this enough, that will come with only experience and practice. But the skill really here is to understand what has happened and to rephrase it using words that pushes them in a direction where they're able to see the same situation but in a different way, in a shifted perspective. What this does is two things. It'll often reduce the emotional intensity because I've addressed the emotion. I've addressed that you don't like, that you feel that you are being treated in an unfair manner because you're being forced to pay when you believe you don't want to. And once I've addressed that and I've created a little space there for them to be open to a negotiation, where I've put in this thought saying, okay, as far as it's fair and reasonable and equitable, you think it's okay to sort of consider a payment. And so now they sort of see value in that and they'll sort of look at another perspective saying, yeah, you know what, it's fine. Maybe if it's fair and equitable and it addresses the fact that, I'm not being asked to unnecessarily bear some burden, I'm okay to sort of talk about this. And this is something that can only be done by a third party neutral. And I think, Marcus, please correct me if I'm wrong. What happens is this is something that we can do as neutrals only because, remember, in our opening statement, we've said that we are not at all concerned with the outcome of your dispute. And we don't just say it, we mean it. So
Correct.
honestly, whether I'm when I say something to you as a neutral, when I show that I understand and I'm giving you this new perspective or I'm having this discussion with you, let's say in a caucus, not in a joint session, but maybe in a caucus, that party really feels like their emotion is being understood and addressed, and they're really now willing to move beyond the emotional hurt and look at ways in which this can be resolved, and that will create the space for progress.
Yeah, absolutely. That was well explained. Like you said, like we don't we don't care about the outcome. They're the positions of power, but we're not the
Exactly.
position of power, are we? Like,
Exactly.
yeah. And that's what we kind of help you consider. Um, we help you consider what a practical consequence could and would look like. So, for example, if you wanted to explore avenues from a different perspective, like Priyanka just said, we can give reflections on what could look like that. So you want to pay, for example, use the same topic. You want to pay a certain amount, so we'll open that door for opportunity to explain what a possible outcome could look like for you. Not you have to pay this, you have to pay that. That is not what we're here to do and or trying to praise at all. Like sometimes parties, there's if there's always alternatives, right? If no agreement's reached. So for example, there might be if it's finance, it might be a management plan, or there's always something else that can be considered. Um, and when that is considered in the joint session, it gives more opportunity. Yeah, it gives more opportunity, which can then clarify things. And they think, you know what? Can we do this instead? And and it encourages that. Do you know what? Yeah, it's because you can feel the connection between both when you're thinking, are you sure that's something you'd like to consider and go ahead with? Have you felt and thought about what that would look like actually going forward? Not really, no, but because you're in the high state of emotion now, don't agree something that you're not comfortable with, let's take a pause, let's reassess, let's have 5, 10, 15-minute break and then return. And then usually upon that return, it's, do you know what? I have thought about that situation. Is there another way that we can consider? And then the other party goes, for example, or parties or a group session might go, yeah, we thought about it too. Maybe. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but there's a higher possibility of that.
No, of course. I mean, it also depends person to person, right? It's also very approach based. It's also we're working on the response and reactions that we're getting from you when we're mediating a conflict for you. Therefore, when we're doing the reality check that Marcus took us through, or we're helping you see what's possible, what we're really doing is we're encouraging you to share more with us, brainstorm with us, and think things through. And this is, of course, without any judgment. Because, like I said, we're not concerned with the outcome. We're also not there to judge you, guide you. We're also not there to make any decisions for you. So, I'm not going to give you suggestions, advice, or guidance on what I would have done or what could be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to help you think this through and maybe help you to look at different options. So let's say once I've brought you from that position and got you to understand, okay, I understand that you need like financial security and you also need acknowledgement. Taking back from my example of not wanting to pay anything to paying something that's reasonable and fair. I'll say, all right. So the other side's asking for, by now we know that she's asking for, let's say, 10 lakhs or 100,000. And I understand that you need financial security and acknowledgement yourself. So let's step back here a little bit and try to understand, what is the real problem that you're trying to solve here. And, then my party is going to go back and think, okay, you know what? Yeah, what apart from the money, what else is sort of connected to this for me? What else am I sort of looking to resolve here apart from the money? And once that's happened, maybe he'll come up with 2 or 3 options that he wants to give me. And I'll say, all right, you know what? Let's just write these 3 options down. Let's talk about the amount you're willing to pay and when you're planning to pay it, maybe, let's say, immediately. Or if you agree, if he says no, but if she's asking for a higher amount, then I want to sort of take more time to give it because I need more time to bring the money. So I'll say, okay, maybe that'll be our option B. And we can put in a higher amount and we can put in a payment schedule that sort of works for you as well. And then he'll be like, no, but I want to sort of come to an in between. So I'll say, okay, you know what? Let's look at another option where we agree on an in between or a moderate amount, and it doesn't look at any kind of monetary concession, but we can keep the payment timelines open. And I can take this offer to the other side, and I can check how they sort of feel about this. Do you think that's a great way to take this ahead? Do you have any thoughts on this? And once I sort of check this with my party and the party says, yeah, it's possible, but I think, I don't know, she may not agree. And I'll say, all right, let's think this through, a little more. So can you tell me what happens if, I go to her with option A? What do you think her response would be? Because understand that these people who are in conflict, especially in family and workplace mediations and family mediations, etc., these are people who've been in long-term relationships. So they really know the other party. They understand and have some kind of idea or a baseline of what kind of reaction or response is possible from the other side. So the more possibilities we explore and the more these discussions sort of happen in a considered manner, new ideas will come up. Parties will themselves come up with such creative solutions which they had never considered before, because now their perspective is shifted. Now they're looking at how to sort of close this, how to resolve this. They're not staying stuck in the position that they were before. And this collaborative thought and approach is now replacing that rigid negotiation where we were going back and forth and getting stuck in a loop. And, it's very possible in mediations that parties have done this a million times before and it hasn't worked. But now we've got them to an opportunity where we're saying, you know what, let's just give this one more shot before you go to court and see what your other options are. And that kind of creativity, when you really sort of invest in exploring and collaborating with your party for creative opportunity building or option building, will really help you move beyond that deadlock or impasse. And I think it's important to also mention here, in most mediations, it doesn't necessarily have to follow process. Like I can have a party who's been referred to me, who's come for a mandatory mediation saying, you know what, I've been through this before. I've been doing this for the past 3 years, 4 years now. We're stuck in the process in court, but I have to do this because you've been appointed as a mediator and we don't have a choice, so I'm here. So they'll often start with a deadlock or an impasse, and you I have to like sort of work backwards, so it's not, it's a very fluid process, which is why also it's not, we're not very like process oriented saying we have to go from A, B, C, D. You can start at a Z, or you can start at a U or a W or a V or a D. I just have to pick up from where you are and sort of
It's
help
true.
navigate us through. So yeah, that's creative option building for you.
um, I agree. I completely agree. As long as we, as long as the structure of mediation is kind of set, but the process is just.
Yeah.
I call it. I've used this term in a mediation. Mediation's like spaghetti meatballs.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
if so, for people who don't know who or what spaghetti meatballs is, it's long spaghetti with meatballs inside, and you're going round and round and round and round in circles, and you're following where you don't think there's going to be a direction. And guess what? We find something, the meatball in terms sake, and then it's like, all right, I didn't know you felt like that. And then next
Yeah.
minute,
Yeah.
we've got a door, a beautiful opportunity that's just open to explore just a little bit further, and then the load seems to lighten. Like the case on Thursday was a fine example. I forgot we was doing deadlock, impasse and deadlock today, but it was a fine example of deadlock. Yeah, I resolved it with two outcomes. I got. I mean, I didn't. They did, but you do your reflections and you do your thing at the end of your thing, and I just looked at my. How did that happen? Like, how did we even resolve it? Because they did not want to resolve. Honestly, Priyanka, they was like no, and I was like, okay, well, so patience and curiosity can reopen dialogue. And
Yeah,
as soon as
exactly.
someone started to smile in it, it was like we're. I'm not sure if we're allowed to smile in mediations, and it broke the ice. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the funniest thing. I had a commercial suit that I was appearing for this week, earlier this week, and we're at this stage where the other side's pressing for interim reliefs and tensions are really high. And for some reason, we had to seek an adjournment in court because, the papers were not in place and the counsel was not ready and such and such. And we agreed to take a shorter date so that we could do this the next time around. And when we walked outside of court, I just like tapped the other side counsel and I said, you know what, can we talk? And I explained to him, I said, you know what, the parties have been at this for a long time. I know they're trying to negotiate this. It's a purely commercial transaction and they've come to some kind of deadlock. But since they're having, difficulty doing this, can your and my chamber speak and can we try to close this for them while this is still in court? Because we've got some in between time now before the next hearing. And he said, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. Great. Let's talk, on their behalf. And so it sort of opened that door. And my client was right there. And his client was also there. So what happened was later my client texted me from court saying, you know what, ma'am, thank you so much for today. We both ended up
Oh,
catching the train back together and we started talking in the train. We
oh
started talking
wow.
to each other about, what's possible, how we can close this and all that. And I said, you know what, great, amazing, please let me know. So sometimes it's really just that small push, that you can give. And I'm not a mediator in this case, even. They've appointed me as their arguing counsel to fight for them in
Wow.
court. But if,
Wow.
but the situation is this, that I can see that if I can just get the parties to agree on a number, this is going to save so much for both of them in terms of resources, money, cost, time, peace of mind.
Health,
You
yeah.
know, yeah. So if we just change, I'm stepping on your reflection today, Marcus. So maybe you can step on my bridge moment. But I'm reading the screen and I'm saying, if we change the way we look at a problem, like if we just look at it differently, it can just reopen dialogue and create so much opportunity and possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what might change if we looked at the problem differently? The outcome, the solution,
absolutely,
um, possibilities. The possibilities are endless.
absolutely.
The,
I agree. Possibilities are always endless.
stuck. That's a great
Mhm.
example using your deadlock on the train moment. Stuck
Yeah,
doesn't mean finished. It
absolutely.
never ever means finished. There's always a way.
Absolutely.
It's always a way forward, and it's just taking you excuse me. It's just taking the time just to come out of the smoke screen to then realize that, oh, can we try this?
Yeah,
Can we
absolutely.
try this? Can we
Absolutely.
try another approach? Well, I never thought of that. Well, I never thought of that. Can we try it? Yeah. Boom. Forward, onward, forwards and onwards. Yeah.
Absolutely. It
Forwards
brings
and
hope
onwards.
back on the table, That's really what it
Yeah.
does. Brings hope back on the table.
Yeah. Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. On that, I'm happy to close if you're happy to close.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today on Deadlock and Impasse. And I hope you can share with us your comments on maybe share your experiences, or if you have any questions for us, happy to look at those and answer those for you. And do join us for the next one. We're going to talk about much more interesting things. And thank you so much, Marcus,
Thank you,
for
Parinka.
today. And well done on the successful resolution. Hopefully, I'll have a
Likewise, likewise.
yeah.
Like, it's
Hopefully,
them little
I'll
things.
have us closed before we connect for the next one. Let's see.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so
Yes.
much again.
Thank you. See you.
Take care. Bye, bye.